All right, well, tonight you get me, and Caroline will probably tell you later because none of this technology stuff is in her wheelhouse. Tonight's going to be very practical stuff, and some of you might be able to say, hey, this is exactly where we are. For others, you may not have children or smaller children or teenagers in the home, but hopefully there's some resources or some information that you might get tonight that might help you help somebody else, or those of you that are grandparents to be able to share some information with your children and maybe impact your grandchildren's lives as well. I want to start, though, with that verse that you have on your handout tonight from Proverbs 4:23, where it says to guard your heart above all else, for it is the source of life. Now, regularly in the Old Testament, the word that's used there that's translated here by the CSB as heart, regularly you see it mind. And in fact, depending on the translation you would be looking at this verse from, it may say guard your mind. So think about that phrase for just a second. If you are guarding, well, let's go to... I mean, the operative term there is guard. If you are guarding something, what do you do? All right, so you're going to protect it. What else is associated with guarding?
Holding on to it. Holding on. Shield it.
Defend. Secure it.
Yeah, most of those are pretty well, so protect. All right, I'm going to go to Eddie. So he said, say it again, Eddie.
Be aware of looking out.
All right, so it suggests that if you're guarding, doesn't it require you to pay attention? Be proactive. There's an assumption at play, or actually a presumption at play, when you talk about guarding. If you are guarding something, it assumes something. What does it assume? It assumes that there is something of value. Have you thought about, like, why would there be a security guard at the bank? Why don't they put a security guard at the landfill? I mean, because there's something of value in the bank. At the landfill, it's garbage, and so nobody's trying to take that. People are trying to take the money. That's why you're going to guard this. All right, so here you've got God speaking through Solomon, this guy that he's given unparalleled wisdom to, and he says to guard your mind. And honestly, you can substitute mind, heart, because in the scheme of things, they're effectively inextricably linked, aren't they? And so if you don't, these two things are working together. And if you're guarding it, you're going to seek to protect it. That's going to require you paying attention. So you can't just slough off or doze off and not paying attention. If you're guarding, you're being proactive, you're being vigilant. And the fact that you're guarding something suggests that what you're guarding is something of value. In this case, your mind, your heart, it is something of value. Now, for you and your family, it's not just you as a mom, a dad, a husband, a wife, that you and your mind and heart are valuable. But in truth, a lot of times what we value even more than ourselves is our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives. They are dear to us. They are precious to us. Their minds, their hearts are valuable to us. And so it's incumbent upon us to do everything that we can to help guard that. And so we do that because they are, and their hearts are valuable. One of the greatest threats, and the extent to which you've thought about a whole lot of these things, I don't know, but it takes little thought at all to realize that Christian families, Christian worldview, biblical truth, all of those things are under assault in our culture. But one of the greatest tools that is being weaponized against your child's mind and heart is the internet, is technology, is social media, all the stuff that's coming into your homes wirelessly or through an Ethernet cable. And so tonight we want to think about some very practical ways that you might be able to give thought to guarding yourself and guarding your family and guarding your kids' eyes, their minds, and their hearts. And so at any point along, and like I am fairly tech savvy, but I'm not like writing viruses or anything, but I'm pretty tech savvy. And so it's likely I can answer your question. If I can't, I'll make up something that sounds reasonable. And beyond that, the stuff that I'm saying tonight just kind of scratches the top of the iceberg, and there's tons of other things that are available online that you might be able to discover, but this will at least get you thinking down the road to help safeguard your family, help safeguard your children's minds and hearts. It's interesting, though, this is one of the first generations that has had to give thought to this type of thing. Let's see. What was the earliest somebody had a cell phone in here? Can you think of...
I had
You had one when?
1998.
You had one in 98.
a bag phone.
When was the bag phone? You remember?
Yeah, we had in our 92, 93.
92, 93. 81. Good night. That was a CB in 81, Eddie. But let's say early to mid 90s, there was a bag phone. I remember my sister getting a bag phone, and my first thought was, who are you going to talk to, and who's talking to you? But secondly, that's silly because those things are expensive, and there's payphones everywhere, right? And I thought, man, that is so, and I ridiculed her repeatedly. That is so dumb having that stupid bag phone. And so then we'll go from bag phones to having some more portable phones that that have rechargeable batteries. And by the time, for me personally, I got to, I think I started seminary, and so that would, for me, be the late 90s, 97, 98 was my first cell phone. And you remember, I think it was $22 a month, and I got 50 whole minutes. But you were afraid to use them because minute 51, oh yeah, it's $14.95 a minute. I mean, it's crazy. And so, but even then, it was somewhat of a novelty. But you're having it. I was driving back and forth to Raleigh every week, and so in the event there's a car problem, I need some help. That's kind of what it was for. Could you imagine in 1995 someone saying to you that you're going to have a cell phone in your pocket or on your hip and you won't leave home without it? It may be the first thing that you look at in the morning and the last thing that you look at when you go to bed. In fact, do you remember the first time that you saw the internet? What was it when you first? What was your first encounter?
It was really slow, and I remember looking something up for the kids who were doing a research project, and how happy I was to find Gatorade.com.
I was in college, and I was in a computer lab, and this professor in the English department that I did some work for, she was doing something, and she said something about the internet. I said, "What's the internet?" And she's like, I was like, "This is it. What can I do?" And I'm looking at it's a black screen with white letters on it, and I was like, "What?" And she was looking at the library at OSU because that was where she'd been on the faculty before. And I was like, "So you can see a card catalog, something?" I was like, "Whoop-de-doo." I mean, but it really didn't take long before exponentially the internet is growing. And I don't know if you remember what it was like if you were to watch a newscast in, let's say, around 2000. Of course, keep in mind, AOL was sending you the CompuServe and the DVD or CDs with 100 hours, all this mess. You had your dial-up modems and all this nonsense. But I remember, for example, at night we would watch the evening news, and you would see the local news station would be visit our website http://www, and they read all this mess, and you got so accustomed early on to hearing that, and then pretty quickly all the beginning garbage went off, and it was just like it's wbtv.com, and so. It's amazing how that has evolved. But the thing that really probably was a game changer was the iPhone. And I'm not an Apple person at all. I'm an Android fan. But the iPhone was a game changer because at that point you go from having the internet existing on computers and people doing mostly computer stuff on a computer to the fact that you now have a portable computer. In fact, most people spend exponentially more time computing on their phone than they actually do talking on their phone. Many people use very few minutes, but they're sending tons of messages, whether emails or text or surfing the web. In fact, for many people, that is their computer now. And it's portable, it's with us. And it's not just portable and with us, but you can be driving down the interstate and watching TV. It's insane how technology has progressed. But it has gotten so ingrained in our lives. Your children, your grandchildren, don't know a life apart from that. And you are the first meaningful generation of parents and grandparents that are really having to think through what all that presents, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you're aware there's a lot of bad and ugly that exists out there, and your children can be exposed to it. And the goal is to try to guard them. And so it's going to require you not just to say, well, it's going to work. They wouldn't go to any of those sites. They wouldn't land there. They wouldn't do that. They won't see that. They won't say that. They won't share. That won't ever happen. Well, if you think that's the case, then that means, I think, among other things, what you profess to value, you don't value it, because you need to pay attention and you need to be proactive. So here's some options that you might want to consider. The first is something, and many of these things we have in our family used and are using or have used. Some of them that we haven't, I can tell you of personal experience or not, but one of the first ones we started some years ago is a free thing called OpenDNS, and it is owned by Cisco. If you're aware of Cisco, not the rapper, but I'm actually even surprised I know that. But Cisco, the computer router company, bigwig in the technology field, and so they are the ones that started this and manage and own this OpenDNS. One of the cool things out of the gate is this is free, but some of you may know what DNS is or what it means. It stands for, the acronym is Domain Naming System. And you may be aware of this, you may not be. But every website is not anything other than a series of numbers. In fact, most of the times the numbers look like this. Like that. And so there'll be variations of a pattern of numbers that look like that. If you have a business and you want someone to send you, or if you want them to visit your website, do you want to give them, hey, visit me at 192.168.50.1? No, you want to say, hey, visit our website at gatecitybaptist.org. Well, the only way that can happen is for some way all of these web addresses that are actually numbers to get translated into letters that we can recognize and order and make words out of. And so that's where DNS comes in. And so what DNS does, and it's server-based, where every website that is ultimately a number, let's get my lighter ready. Every website ultimately is a number, but with DNS, with Domain Naming System, each of those gets a lettered name, that it becomes gatecitybaptist.org or weather.com or whatever it is. Typically how this happens is when you are at home, let's say you've got Spectrum or you've got AT&T or North State or whatever your internet service provider is, there's a signal that's going to go from your modem through the stuff to Spectrum's servers. You will have typed in an address. Let's say you want to go to weather.com. Well, what's going to happen is that's going to go to the DNS servers at Spectrum, and they're going to translate that into a number and take you to that website. So unless you change it at your home, whatever your internet service provider is, they manage the DNS for you. And so at your home, you have a modem, you have a router that has that information locked into it. What you can do, and it's fairly simple, is to go in and change those addresses. And so instead of going to a Spectrum DNS, you can put in, and you go to their website, they'll give you the numbers. They'll even walk you through step by step. This is where you can change these numbers. And so instead of your computer going to Spectrum's DNS servers and then onto the internet, it's going to go to Cisco's OpenDNS and then on the internet. Is that making sense? Now, what's the benefit of that? The benefit is that you can go to OpenDNS and it's free. You can create your own account and you can block entire categories of websites. Entire categories. And so it's not just porn, you can take out gambling, you can take out dating services, you can take out social media, you can take out legions of different categories. Now, sometimes it can pose some challenges because it may be that there's a site that you want to go to that gets caught up in this. For example, I remember a few years ago, Carolyn was trying to go on Craigslist. She's like, why can't we get on Craigslist? Well, Craigslist has personal ads, and that was blocked for us through DNS, so I had to go whitelist that which is so that you could have access to that. And so, Carol, have you met anybody through that yet?
One guy that worked out.
Okay. And so, anyway,
Don't give up.
keep trying.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about that is that there is no special software that's required. It's free. And it's not just your child, it's anybody that's on the network at your home. All that stuff is blocked. That's pretty nice. Now, I'm not suggesting that something can't get through and you can't wind up somewhere, and there aren't ways maybe around some of this stuff, but it catches an awful lot of stuff. But what's one of the glaring weaknesses of it?
Gotta go through that.
Well, but once it's set up, though, if you've got that at your home, what's one of the weaknesses? Potentially apps. That kind of depends.
Private browser,
Do I?
private browser, incognito.
No, because incognito is still going to have to go through it. All you got to do is, if you're on a phone, turn your Wi-Fi off. Use your phone's data. And so then that phone is going to where? It's going to AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile, whoever. It's going to their servers to do this. DNS only works at home, so you can't change it. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think you can change it on a phone. I actually haven't thought to look into that. That is a weakness. Now, for those of you that have younger children or children that you have not permitted to get access to a cell phone yet, that's pretty well sufficient in many cases, because it can, if they've got a tablet, they can't, the only place they're using it, for example, is at your home. Protecting the Wi-Fi network in your home is sufficient. When they get older, though, that's when you're going to have to start thinking we're going to have to up our game. All right, so there's some other things that we can start giving some consideration to. I'm going to skip down to that section, device control. One is router-based control. And just so that, and I promise you I have no delight in either being boring or particularly technical, but I just want you to make sure you understand the difference between these two words. All right. These two things are not exactly the same thing. What the modem does is that it provides the internet to a location. All right, so it's getting the signal from wherever, that coax, that fiber line, it's coming to your home. These can be a combination device, or they can be separate. And what the router does is that it gets that internet and effectively dispenses it, and gives your phone an IP address, gives your laptop an IP address, gives your smart TV an IP address. So if you're on Gate City's Wi-Fi right now, your phone is going to connect to our router, which is connected to our modem, and that's how you get online. All right? What you can do, and like I said, I'm not an Apple fan. I don't think, it's not that I think they have a bad product. I hate their ecosystem. I hate being so locked in by them, and I hate that they rob you to death. And so, anyway, I'm not a big Apple fan, and they don't actually have one of these products yet. But and there's a number of different companies. I put a couple of them on there. The first generation was called Google Wi-Fi. Google's bad about changing names for stuff, and so now it's called Nest Wi-Fi. Orbi has a series of routers. Netgear has a series. One of their big wireless mesh systems is one called Orbi. Most of these devices now have apps that connect to them. And so that when you buy one of those routers, there's an app that will connect to it, and many of them have parental controls in there that you can turn on. And so, for example, in Google Wi-Fi, there's one that you can just click parental access, and by default, it's going to, that's specifically primarily a porn filter is what that is. I don't know how, my sense of it is that it's not particularly stringent, but if I'm using that and OpenDNS, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Many of these you can block. there's great power you can get by having a router that you can control. And many times that requires you buying a different router than what Spectrum gives you or AT&T gives you, that you get one of these other devices. So, because a lot of times they don't allow you to unlock or have control over everything that you may want to. And so, for example, with us, with Google Wi-Fi, we can shut the internet off to any device at any time. We can, like for example, we've got 2 TVs in our house and we use Roku. So the TV downstairs in the basement, the Wi-Fi shuts off to it at 10 o'clock. And so if they're watching something at 10 o'clock, all of a sudden it goes off. It doesn't come back on that TV until 6:30 in the morning. So they can get up and watch TV if they wanted to, but not between 10 and 6:30. You can do that with any device as well. And that's pretty handy. Does that stuff make sense? So again, there's some apps that will give you some device control provided what they're using connects to that router. Again, it goes back to the challenge we just talked about. If they're not using your Wi-Fi, you've got some more difficulties. Still though, talking Wi-Fi stuff, Disney, we have not used these products. I'm aware of them, but Disney has a product called Circle. Circle is a device that would plug into your either into your router or your modem, and it's going to create a Wi-Fi signal that you're like. Let's say you call it Harman Circle, and so on your kid's device, they would connect to Harman Circle, and then you with the Circle app would say what they have permission to do, and so you can limit time, you can limit websites, you can limit categories. That's a specific device that you have to have. It costs, I think, was it $69? That's a one-time cost. But even if you don't want to buy that device, they have the Circle app. That one's $10 a month or $90 a year. The cool thing about that is device control, but whether that's on a cell phone, whether they're connected to Wi-Fi or anything else, that gives you some control over it. What stinks about it, there's a cost to that. And I'm not sure.
We can have it on our router. Actually, it's actually built in.
So you,
The circle.
Circle.
The circle app one.
the Circle, but when I looked into it, I looked at it yesterday and they were showing $10.
Listen, I've had this for a few years, so maybe it.
Do you guys like Circle?
Yeah, I can turn it off right from here. Everything.
Phone and
Can you make your truck horn blow in here?
Nope.
But we would all know it. We would all know it. And again, I'm speaking, and Jamie and Israel can tell you a little bit more about that if you've got some questions. I haven't personally used that, so I don't know. Something that we use, much to our children's chagrin, is a program called Google Family Link. You don't have, I believe Google Family Link is still, I'm not sure if you can use that for iOS devices or not. Do you know, Shelby, you're shaking your head no?
no, the screen time one.
Screen time, yeah, that's an iOS only. Google Family Link, I think, is an Android device only. And I believe they work somewhat similarly. How Google Family, and again, I'm just going to talk about both of these together, but how they work is that you install this app on your child's device, and it becomes a boot level app. And by that, I mean your kid can't get around it. And so when that device boots up, it automatically, once it's set up, it starts this program. And so within this app, you can have everything green lighted so they can do whatever, be on the internet as much as they want. Our kids can't do that. And so they have a daily internet limit. Like you can say, all right, they can have no more than 2 hours today. And so if you do that, let's say it's Nathan, he's got 2 hours, whatever he's doing, the clock is ticking. And so whether he's using our Wi-Fi or whether he's using cell phone data, it doesn't make any difference. And at 10 o'clock, that device is going to shut off. And so if you're doing something, all of a sudden it says, time's up. It's also nice, though, too, if your kid gets in trouble as well. And so, or something, yes. So that you say, hey, you've lost it for the rest of the day or the week, whatever it is. Sometimes if you've hollered for them and they don't come, you can just turn their data off. And what happened? And then they come up, and so...
They emerge from the depths.
Yeah, like, oh. And so that one's completely free as well. We really, really like that one. And it really does give you a lot of control. And you can say, and my guess is Screen Time does the same way, but in Google Family Link, you can have, so like for example, Peter, he has a tablet. Before he can install an app, he can attempt to, but it sends me a message and I have to approve it, whether that app gets installed or not. You can also, if there's an app that they're using that you don't want them to use, you can just block it. And all of a sudden, even though it's installed on that device, they can't access it. And so it just kind of disappears. So if it's, I don't know, even if it's Minecraft and they've been bad and you want to turn that off. And that's also helpful for us, though, too, as a homeschool family, because our kids can get in trouble and they could have lost their devices, but we've got to turn some of the stuff on for school. We can turn on just the apps that they need for that. So that's really handy, and it's free. So that's really good. Family Link is, but Screen Time is the Apple equivalent.
And I use that all the time.
And there are some other free, I mean, of course, between the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, there are probably, I'm sure, stacks of other products that give you the ability to do some of these same things. But the nice thing is when you're talking about Apple bringing a program to the market or Google, I mean, these are the 900-pound gorillas, and so they're pretty robust things. One of the things I put on there, you need to not only guard content, but also time. And this is something that everybody's going to struggle with, because you know one of the nice things when your kids are using the internet? They don't bother you. Here, take a device. And so the temptation is to say, hey, go have it. But I hope you realize that that's not in your child's best interest. It doesn't help them on a whole stack of different levels. And beyond that, the more time that they have access to this, especially the more limitless access they have to this, the greater likelihood it is that they're going to wind up viewing, sharing, engaging in stuff that you don't want them to. So the nice thing is with some of these apps and some of the limitations we've talked about, you're able to control that and rein some of that in. But the stuff, these device-based controls, controlling Wi-Fi has no bearing on mobile data. So you've got to think beyond that. One of the things that you can do is under the accountability section, and one in particular, we've done this one. It's called KidLogger. That's on there. There are Apple apps that do the same thing. That's one, and KidLogger is not the only Android app. And in fact, actually, you can KidLogger. I know you can use it on Android, iOS, and Windows. So you can use it on desktop, tablet, or mobile device. There's a free version, but there's also a paid version. The paid version gives you 10 devices for, I think it's $79 a year, unless it went up. The cool thing about that is that it is a key logger. What do you think a key logger may be? It is checking every keystroke that is made. And so when, for example, this device was installed on Nathan's tablet, if he's sending a message, we see what that message is. Now, the downside of that, you can't see what's received, but you can see every letter that is sent. And honestly, he had some spelling issues. And lots of typographical mistakes, because sometimes you're like, what does that say? And the other thing about it is that you can, he didn't have a cell phone service when he had it, so he wasn't texting. One of the nice things as well, though, too, is it can give you the ability to you can set the frequency of this. It can take a screenshot of texting so that you see that. You can also set it so that if any image is sent or received, you can see what that image is. I don't know if you're aware of that. That's pretty important these days. It really is, because kids, and it's frightening, though, too, because kids can be dumb and send a picture and can get in some real trouble, life-altering trouble. And so it is helpful, it's wonderfully helpful to know that there are some things that you can do to get in on this and to know what's going on and to control what's going on. Now, what are some of the objections to something like this?
Privacy.
It's privacy. And so if your kid says, well, what about my right to privacy? What do you say? Denied. Well, and sincerely, that the answer to that question is something that you have to settle that before you institute anything. And so either your child has a full right to privacy or they do not. My contention is that they are not at a stage where they are capable of demonstrating the wisdom and like they can be given freedom, but it is constrained freedom. It is accountable freedom. It is freedom with oversight. And so they don't have a right to total privacy. And at any point you have the ability to know what's going on because they are valuable to you. Their hearts, their minds are valuable to you even when it's not valuable to them. And so that should motivate you to say, you know what, I don't care whether they like it or not. They can be my friend when I get older. Maybe before I go into the nursing home. Then we can be friends. But right now, they need a mom, they need a dad. And they need somebody to guard their hearts and their minds because I want them, again, thinking with the end in mind, I want them to be a lifelong follower of Christ. And I'm telling you, the internet is just ripe with pitfalls to keep them from achieving and experiencing that. Keystroke loggers, how they work is this. Have any of you ever changed the keyboard that your device uses? All right, so some of you may like, if you use an Android device, or you can do this even on an iOS, you may like Google Keyboard. I don't like Google Keyboard. I use one called Pulse. It's a Microsoft, no, not Pulse. I can't remember what it is now. Anyway, it's a Microsoft product. It's the one I like. And so, by default, my device comes with Samsung keyboard. I could change it to Google. In this case, what it does is that you download, and you have to do this. You don't do this with you can do this with your kids' knowledge. We did it without our kids' knowledge. But you've got to have that device, and you have to download this keyboard and set it to use that particular keyboard. Because that's the only way that this works. Because by using that keyboard, it's sending that data up so that you can see what's going on. And how KidLogger works is that it's sneaky in how it does it because it names it something and puts it with an Android icon, which that's the little green monster with the dots. And so if your child is looking at the files or looking at downloads, they would see it'll say something like Android keyboard. And you would think, I don't delete that. That looks like that's an operating system file. They won't mess with it. And so for us using this, we said, here's your device. And they all know, you don't have a right to privacy with this. You simply don't. Also, you cannot, under any circumstances, change the keyboard. If you do, we're going to have a problem. And that leads them to suspect that something is going on, but they don't have to know everything that's going on. And so that's how KidLogger works. And there's a stack of these different devices. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? That one is pretty sneaky though. It really. But there's that.
Can you see what the other person texts though? Remember how we had a problem because we could see what he said, but we couldn't see what.
Because they were using Google Hangouts, but if they were using a texting app, it had the ability, I think, to send screenshots of those. It didn't on Hangouts. But like Snapchat, I can't remember. There were several of them that it would snag a screenshot and you would see it. And so, but that's the only, so it is entirely possible though with that your kids could get something or receive communication that you may not be able to see what it is. But at least you can see what your kid's saying in response. And that'll let you know maybe we've got a problem here, something we need to look at. There are some, what I described as accountability software apps. I just put a couple of them. There's a number of them. One is called Covenant Eyes. Another is called X3 Watch. And these have some. I think X3 Watch is free. Covenant Eyes, I think, is paid. How this works, and they're pretty simple. You pick somebody that would be like your accountability person, whoever it would be. And so if it's a parent, or excuse me, if it's a child, you can do it as a parent. And so what it does, and I'm not sure what the frequency is, how this works, but I think it's typically weekly, but you might be able to change that. Every website that you go to, it's going to send a list of, these are the websites that are visited. Now, there is some benefit, obviously, in that, but there's a lot of limitations as well, because it's not going to show text. It's not going to show if there are apps that some of this communication or some of these sites are visited, you're not going to see some of that. If they're doing stuff in Chrome or Edge or Safari, you'll see it. But apart from that, you won't. So I mean, there's some benefit, but again, that's kind of limited. One of the biggest things, though, that you need to keep in mind is that your kids, just like we all do, we all need accountability. And in the absence of accountability, do you know what we do? Nothing. We don't do anything. I mean, like if your teachers never gave you homework and assigned homework or checked homework, would you ever do it? I didn't. I mean, when I had teachers that I knew never checked the homework, I never did the homework. If teachers never gave a pop quiz after assigning reading, would you ever do the reading? No. You do what they say because you anticipate there may be some accountability. And your kids, your grandkids, they need to know and understand that there is accountability. And at any point, you may pick up their device. It can be on a regular basis, it can be on a surprise basis. But that they don't have a right to operate in secrecy, and you're going to be looking over their shoulder. Why? Because they matter, their hearts, their minds matter, and you've got this colossal gateway into their mind and heart by virtue of the internet, and you want to protect them from it. As part of that, though, I think a huge thing is knowing what the passwords are. And if you have no idea what your kids' passwords are, that is a real danger. Because they have locked you out of what could be an entire world that they are exposed to that you don't have any idea about. The other thing that you need to keep in mind, though, too, is that you need to be on guard against apps that encrypt the data, lock the data, or delete histories. This is one particular, I hate Snapchat. I loathe Snapchat. Our kids can't, well, they're not actually on any social media platforms, but Snapchat in particular, and it's not the only one that does this, but you can send stuff through Snapchat that disappears. And unless it has been screenshotted, it's gone. Snapchat can't recover it. I mean, that piece of data is encrypted and deleted, and it's gone. Maybe the Chinese can see it, but unless you can get permission from them, you have no access to it. I don't know about you. I think that's particularly dangerous, that your children can be in communication with people, your grandkids can be in communication with people, and you'd have no idea what's going on, and no ability to look back over that. So I'm a big fan of being an opponent of those types of apps. At the end of the day, you've got to make your own decisions about what you're going to allow your kids to do. For us, so that's a non-starter. The other thing to keep in mind is this. You have to, and I was thinking about this today because I need to do some brushing up on some of this because just recently somebody's talked about a Reddit thread. I'm like, what's Reddit? I mean, there is always something cropping up. And there's new websites, there's new apps, and there's things that get really popular really fast. And if you think that being on your toes today is being on your toes 2 years from now, you are woefully mistaken because the technology is moving so very quickly. And if you're not capable of doing it, well then talk to some people and say, hey, what's popular these days? What are your kids? What are your grandkids? What are they doing? What games are they playing? Something also to keep in mind as well, you may think, my kids don't have access, for example, to some of these social media platforms and the ability to communicate electronically with others. But a lot of times they do by virtue of the games that they use. Because some of those games, for example, Minecraft, you can play Minecraft as part of a network with known people or complete strangers. And what was it, Catherine, just yesterday said something, she was playing something stupid.
It's a cat, like you raise cats.
There's a site called Roblox that has a whole bunch of little games inside of it that they can play with people they know, people they don't know. I mean, but it's a whole bunch of little bitty games inside of one big.
Well, yesterday she's playing some raising cats, which,
Yeah.
but was asked by someone, "Are you LGBTQ?" To our 9-year-old, who's raising cats, thankfully digitally. Those are the best kind. What I'm saying is that even when you're paying attention, there are still threats that you're gonna. If you doze off, you're going to be allowing dangers to pass. Was it about the cats, Israel?
Yeah.
I know. He's got to go. He's got to go change the digital litter box. when you guard something, one of the things that you do is you control access to it. And so there's some things that you allow in, and there's some things that you don't allow. And you allow access, you control that access because what you're guarding, like we said at the beginning, it's valuable. Listen, you and I all realize in terms of our children, our grandkids, there's people that are dearest on earth to us, and they matter to us. They are valuable to us. And to the extent that we have ability to guard their hearts and minds, if they are valuable to us, then we need to start paying attention, and maybe in ways that we haven't before. So, I might have finished early tonight, but I'll give you, yes ma'am.
So what kind of limits do you set, like, for your family time-wise? Because like our fourth grader really could care less. I mean, he has access to play. The older one always wants to, but I feel like they're really strict, like really, really strict.
Ours has been 2 hours,
Yeah.
but I mean regularly they'll say, "Can I have some more time?"
Yeah.
And sometimes you say yes, sometimes you say no.
One of the things that I have found is tricky is that some of our sons are certainly more tech savvy than I am. And so, and like, I'm not trying to say that like my kids are bad, but they found a way around the system because they're smarter than I am. Yeah. And like, because I'm the one home all the time. But fortunately, we also have snitches, right?
Mm.
So they come and say, hey, somebody, I don't know how they did it, and so I'm on to them. And so my way of handling that is that we go 1980, which means I take the device, right? So I have a really nice Google screen in my kitchen now that was like a Christmas gift because they figured out how to make calls to their friends around the system. Somehow they got around the system.
Yeah, because what would happen is they'd want to listen to music at night. So they had a Google Nest Hub, which is the one with the screen on it, and we can't. Let's see. We can't add that. Can we? I don't think you can add that device. I can't remember. I don't think we could add that device to Family Link. I don't think. Or if we did, it would. There wouldn't be any time on it to listen to any music. And so they had. And the other thing is, we used the Google Minis so that there's a lot less yelling because our house is old and there's these plaster walls, and especially when we first moved there, when it's time for supper, it's like it's time to eat! And so like your face is bleeding trying to scream so loud at them, and still nobody comes. And so we've got those, and so hey Google Broadcast, ring the dinner bell.
I have those too, but they still yell.
Well, sometimes I'm yelling at Google because I said, ring the dinner bell. And so, so I didn't want those devices to lock. But the problem is that one had a screen, and so.
But like the threat has to be real, and it has to be like, you know, this is the system, this is how this is going to go down. If you try this, then you're going to lose it.
And I think he lost it twice temporarily, but it's been in the kitchen now for, yeah.
And like, it was just to talk, because everybody seems to be able to stay up, I guess, till like 2 in the morning and talk to their friends. I don't know, like, I mean, there seems to be very little supervision in the world right now on how late a kid can text or communicate, and so they just wanted to talk later with their friends, and so we shut it down. But like, it's tricky, especially like if something happens to Michael, if you want some technology, come to the front of my house because I'm just going to put it all by the street because I couldn't keep up with it. I wouldn't know how to do this. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you don't have the ability, it's likely you know people that can. I mean, I can tell you my 2 cents worth, but it's likely there's family members. Don't ask your kids about this because you don't want them to know. Because at the end of the day, there are going to be ways around most of these things. There's some that I don't know exactly how you can get around, but there's ways around virtually everything.
The screen time for the iOS, I have found that there is not, minus a 1 minute, like she can ask for time, like Maddie omitted some information I really needed last week, just decided not to tell me. So I took her phone and I locked it all down. She got 5 minutes on every app. That was it, that's all she got for the day. And she asked me on the way to school, can I have music? I ignored her. She gets 1 extra minute lit. That's all she got for the whole day. She couldn't use the school Wi-Fi. She couldn't use her mobile data. She couldn't do anything. Did she learn her lesson? Yeah. If I ask her a question, will she give me the whole answer? Yeah.
Yes,
'Cause I'll take it and I'll lock it completely out.
And obviously the equivalent to that on the Android side is Google Family Link. Those are pretty robust things, and when you,
I mean, I can give her, like with Leah, she has a tablet. She currently is not able to have it for the next like 2 or 3 months. That's how
Mhm.
long out the punishment is. But she'll get 2 hours. And it doesn't matter if she's on the internet for 2 hours. It doesn't matter within her, able to Google what she can Google in that amount of time. If she's on kids' YouTube, it doesn't matter what she's on. The 2 hours starts from the moment she turns on that tablet.
right.
And it doesn't matter what app. Now, I can give her 15-minute increments past that, or I can do an hour, but I don't normally.
Well, something that took us a little bit of time to figure out, though, too, is, and I don't know if Apple does the same thing, on Google Family Link, if you set it for 2 hours, it's 2 hours per device. And so, like,
She only has one device.
well, like our kids have some Chromebooks, though, too, to do some of the schoolwork. And so if you go to that, that doesn't count.
Yeah, but
Or-
those don't have any apps, and our Chromebooks are still through the school,
right,
so they're locked down on what you can search.
right.
So, Michael, I think there's gotta be a sense of understanding. I mean, you've mentioned that you tell the kids, okay, this is what you have and this is why, and that it can't just be a sword that you're using against them. It needs to be something that you're using together as an understanding of, okay, this is why we're doing it, this is what it is, and it's not a punitive thing as much as it is a shielding thing. And if they understand that, they may be less likely to take it as a challenge to say, okay, he put this wall up, I'm gonna see if I can get around it.
Well, and at least with our kids, my sense of it is that they, in part because for them, virtually the whole time it has been this way. So it's not like necessarily something has been taken from them. So it has been, it's been more defensive. Like we're protecting you, so this can't get to you, or you're not going to be able to get to this. Now we do weaponize it sometimes if they've been just turning off access or whatever, that type of thing. But
Well, it's gonna depend on the child too, because I know with our twins growing up, they had completely different control points. One, you could take something away and it was the worst thing ever. The other one, you just threatened to give them a pop or something that, you can take all my stuff, just don't do that.
right,
And so it depends on the child, so, the question comes up of how long, it may be different per child. Depending on activities, you may have one that's in sports and another one who's not. Well, now one's got more time than the other, so you need to spend the time to figure out what's important for that child.
when especially as kids get older, in some ways your methods of discipline, they get fewer and fewer. But at the end of the day, discipline to me, one of the biggest, not tricks, but components of that is that you're affecting a child at some place of value. And if that's making their bottom feel uncomfortable when they're really little, but like if I were to spank Andrew now, he'd be like, I think you missed a spot. But you turn off data, and I can't breathe. I need to. And so, yeah. To your point, though, I think you do have to, because because some kids just aren't interested. It does seem, though, especially with this generation, that virtually all of them are, at least somewhat significantly, some egregiously so. But I mean, really, even among adults, it's become our lifeline. And you leave the house without your phone. I mean, you'd leave without pants before you'd leave without your phone, And so,
Internet goes down, that's the worst thing.
yeah,
But an understanding from the very beginning is that for the kids especially, it's a privilege. Those devices are a privilege.
correct.
It's not a right. And that's, along with all the other things that we've said, the fact that they matter, that we love them, we care. That's one of the reasons why it's a privilege at this point.
Well, and it's not just children, but we all operate best with accountability. And the more isolated that we are, whether it's electronically or physically in terms of isolation from others, the more apt it is that we are to, if it's electronically or whatever it is, to engage in behaviors that are out of bounds as a follower of Christ. And so we all benefit from accountability. And so it shouldn't be something simply that you're thinking about with respect to your children, but we all need people that are looking over our shoulder on a regular basis, and we're not trying to hide from others. I was getting ready to say something in respect to that, Frank, and I forgot what it was, so it probably was not very good.
Probably the most profound
It
thing.
actually, now that you say it, I believe it was. It was particularly profound.
I do know that when we installed a monitoring thing on our oldest sons, we handed it to him, says, just so you know, you touch this, it's done, you're done, everything gets taken away from you. But I can see everything you do on this phone. Just left it at that, and just to let him know that we do see that, and it tells me if he's touched that app or not also.
Oh, and honestly, that's good. Like, I know, for example, Caroline at any point could pick up any device I've got, and she could look at whatever. And so we all benefit from that, though, knowing that somebody can look and see what's going on. And our kids need to know that as well. And so, I mean, I've talked about this even in sermons before, though. You've been in stores where they say security, scan, and record, sections 3, 4, and 7. And like at that point, I'm always like, did I do something? And so, but when we are mindful that somebody is watching or may be watching, it changes our behavior. And so,
The next step, you're gonna have somebody driving pretty soon, on the road. Got devices now that, you can put on the car, you know exactly where they've been.
yeah, I put on. I'm sorry, I put that on there though too. The where are they? For most people, obviously Apple has its own location stuff though, but even on Apple devices, most people are using Google products, whether Google Maps or Waze. Google Maps though has location sharing. We actually, I do that with Caroline, like, well, of course my mom, since my dad died, Caroline's mom as well, so like we can see wherever they are. That's just very handy even for us though.
Of course, they turn it off.
Yeah, they can, but then there's Life 360. They have free and paid options. We did that for a while. That one, and I don't know if it's still the same way, it seemed to drain your battery more. Is that what, did y'all use, do you use that one?
We had used it for a while with my dad. My mom passed away, and but it drains your battery and something awful. So we quit using
I like its location sharing
it.
better.
Good.
Caroline didn't like it because it would show me, I was sitting at CentriKid, and she was going to stay with her cousin at Wrightsville Beach, and it says she's going 85 miles an hour.
I was just keeping up with traffic.
And so,
That's like a,
Keeping up with traffic, you knew that.
and so I called her and I said, slow down. I said, 85 is not, that's an interstate sign, not a speed limit sign.
Like I had a cop in the trunk.
Yeah, and so she didn't like that. So
I would have declined that call.
yeah, but it's likely, to the driving thing. It's likely once Nathan is driving by himself, I'd probably do something like that. And of course, there's a stack of devices that can monitor this stuff.
Oh, and with elderly parents, like my mom has some memory problems and she got lost. And I was able to say, pull over, and I just hit a button and said, route me to mom. Right? So like, that was huge.
And that's free.
Free.
So anyway, hopefully this is helpful, real practical. Any other questions? Anybody else have something else that you've used that you said, hey?
Just out of curiosity, like, I know siblings have, like, if you have older siblings, you have to worry about the younger kids earlier, but, like, my oldest kid is 4.
Mm-hmm.
At what age do you, like, and we monitor, like, we're very careful about what she can use on her little Fire tablet, but is it 6? Is it 8? Like, when do you really, really, really hone in on all this stuff?
My advice would be don't give it to them until you absolutely have to. You know what I mean? Like
Or-
hold off giving it to them until you have to. But then once you give it to them, I mean, I would say when Nathan was 11, we had
I was earlier than that.
earlier than that.
Well, and that's the thing, though. So, like Dottie,
They have little baby
because the problem is Dottie is going to be further along than Lily, and so you'll have to start paying attention to Lily earlier than you would have with Dottie, and so that's been our case with Peter's got a tablet earlier than the others did, just because they're going to pick up one from one of their siblings. And so,
Just even the average age of exposure to pornography now, I mean, it's just getting lower and lower and lower all the time, so that like a 7 or 8-year-old would be able to find,
But
would
even
be
like,
exposed to things you didn't know.
you know, like YouTube, even remember when Garrett was little, like, they'll watch a video that you know is appropriate, but then
But
what
the
they show you next, you know, what's up next, it could be completely inappropriate, and they don't know, I mean, they just.
well, and thankfully, YouTube does a pretty good job. And so, like, YouTube is not a porn site. I mean, you might
Right.
find inappropriate things, but it won't be like.
But you would say even with the open DNS, that would be something easy to do now, right? To just go ahead and block some of those things. And like, you probably don't need to worry about her text, you know, right now. Because like, I know she's really smart, but her, you know, like, you probably, that's not on your radar. But you'll know, I think, with your child. And one of the things we're still figuring out too is like, or something I struggle with is, you could text somebody you're interested in and they're interested in you throughout the day. I kind of struggle with building that type of like unlimited access. You know, like, I mean, like the issues of these things we've just touched on, but it's like, you communicating with somebody regularly, I feel like there should be limits on that, because like, they don't work out most of the time, right? And then you've got this, like, I don't know, I just think there's boundaries that need to be put up, and different children, like Roger said, you gotta watch for different things.
One thing we do too, like, cell phones are not allowed in bathrooms or bedrooms, like, to
What-
stay on the first floor. Only.
Right.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And then they're kept in our room anyways.
Like when they're not using them.
That's where they charge.
Yeah.
In the bathroom.
You're cracking yourself up tonight.
I know. I've said some of the funniest things I've said today. Yes.
We do do that too, though, it's not allowed in the bedroom, so like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the bedroom.
It stinks though, because I think everybody that's in this room, probably none of our parents had to think about any of this stuff. And so it's a different world. It really is. And the threats are great, but you value your kids, you value your grandkids, and so you got to be on guard.
I think the same thing is, you know, what you were able to get around even when you were young, even when it was not the same thing, and you just know, okay, how they think, they're gonna figure out how to get around whatever they can if they really want to, so just being on guard.
Well, and because the technology you got to stay up, not just with knowing what the app, but even how the technology itself works. So, and I mean, Caroline has leaned on me, but I mean, somebody's got to be able to do it in the house. So, anyway, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for letting us walk through these issues tonight. And every one of us in this room has people in our lives that are the dearest on earth to us. And it's not just their lives that matter, but it's their hearts and minds. And to the extent that we have the ability to influence and control and to guard their hearts and minds, I pray that you lead us to pay attention, maybe in ways that we haven't before, so that threats that could draw them away from you or keep them from becoming a follower of yours, that we do everything within our power to guard against that. So we say this to you in Christ's name. Amen.